occasionally Tatsuki Fujimoto will drop a chapter of Chainsaw Man that reminds you, oh yeah, this is written by Tatsuki Fujimoto. And whether those are chapters like Yoru trying to figure out what's down there in Denji's pants, the black no-eyed Chainsaw Man trying to take Kobeni out on a date, or more recently than anything, Asa, Yoru, and Denji being cast down into the aging devil's realm. Occasionally Tatsuki Fujimoto will do what I assume is the narrative version of unbuttoning his pants after a big meal and say, time to rest back into my insanity. But does that mean that these chapters within Chainsaw Man are bad? And the answer, to me, is a resounding no. See, because while I haven't heard people talking much about chapter 180 or chapter 181, I believe what Tatsuki Fujimoto was setting up with these two chapters could possibly be his greatest work yet. I'm aware that sounds insane when you consider the fact that basically all we've seen in these two chapters is Asa and Yoru walking around while an ex-devil hunter tries to hug himself to death against a tree. But if I'm correct in my theorization, I believe that Denji, Asa, and Yoru being cast down into this tree-related hellscape could possibly be Tatsuki Fujimoto setting up the reveal of the Chainsaw Man's true source of power. On top of that, the aging devil having an entire realm that it controls is kind of a crazy scale for the Chainsaw Man universe. And the cherry on top of all of this is the fantastic meta commentary that's been going on talking about how aging is a part of life. So while the last two chapters of Chainsaw Man might have seemed weird or unimportant to you, I'd argue that they're not only a ton of fun, but also might be leading up to one of the most important reveals in Chainsaw Man's history. Which is why today we're talking chapter 181 of Chainsaw Man Explained. But before we get to explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you want to see me try to bring real-life challenges to the anime world, go ahead and follow the brand new channel that I created with Stephen He, Chris Barnett, and Danny Mata called Anime IRL. Or if you want to hear me talk about anime and manga, go ahead and follow my anime podcast at Taku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything happening in anime and manga this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So before we get into the meat of chapter 181, I want to briefly go over what happened in chapter 180, because we didn't cover chapter 180, mostly because not enough happened to warrant an entire video. And thus, to quickly recap, at the chapter of 179, the aging devil told Asa, Yoru, and Denji that they were not nearly mature enough to play with the aging devil, and thus the aging devil sent them to what appears to be a realm controlled by the aging devil. Now, when Asa is sent down into this aging devil realm, she believes she's having the same dream that she had in chapter 110. See, because it was revealed to us in chapter 110 that Asa has this reoccurring nightmare of sorts, where she's running down an alley for some reason, but the alley is filled with the bodies of dead chickens. And even though she tries to avoid the bodies of these dead chickens, the alley eventually becomes so densely packed with them that it's impossible for her to avoid them. And usually around this point where she can no longer avoid these bodies, she notices a darkness ahead of her. But before she can get to that darkness, she always wakes up. Now, initially when Asa had this dream, most people believed that she was having this recurring nightmare because of how her story begins, with her accidentally murdering the chicken devil who was her class's mascot. And thus people believe that this dream was some kind of trauma response to the guilt that she felt over the murdering of said mascot. However, as we look back at this dream in chapter 110, it seems more and more like this dream was about the future and not the past. And more like the chicken's bodies that are piling up in this alleyway aren't a representation of the chicken that she killed in the past, but the people that she would end up massacring in the future. And this is a problem that we've already seen Asa have to address, because over the duration of Asa and Yoru's battle against the black no-eyed Chainsaw Man, Asa has now twice given control of her body over to Yoru just for Yoru to fire off massive bangs that wipe out civilians by the thousands. And it's these kinds of situations that have forced Asa to remember that Yoru is a devil. And thus I believe that this dream is some kind of amalgamation of the guilt that she feels over her pasts and the horror that she knew was coming with her future. But what's going on with the darkness at the end of the alley? Well, what's one surefire thing that wakes you up every single time you're dreaming? Realizing you gotta pee? Finally getting to hook up with your crush in dream? Or is it death? See, because we've all had dreams where we died, or at least where we almost died. Because at least for me, before I die in any of my dreams, my body always wakes me up. And what if Asa is going through the exact same thing? What if the chickens are a representation of Asa's guilt over the people that she will kill? Which explains why there's more and more chickens the further she travels down the alleyway. And right when there's so many chickens in the alleyway that she can no longer avoid the truth of what she's done, death is the inevitable outcome. See, this idea works for multiple reasons. One, because of the events of chapter 181 and Asa and Denji possibly having to spend 1,000 years in the aging devil's realm. Two, because Tatsuki Fujimoto loves prophetic dreams that usually have to deal with an alleyway, door, or just an end goal in general. And three, because remember, the final boss of this part is supposedly the Death Devil. The Asa's dream is really no different from Denji's dream, and thus, considering the fact that Denji's dream was prophetic for both Aki and Power's deaths, there's really no reason for us to assume that Asa's dream doesn't fall into the same categorization. And therefore, the reason that dream was probably brought back up to Asa as she descended down into the aging devil's realm is because death, in one way or another, is coming for either Asa or Yoru. But why do I say in one way or another? Well, because two potential deaths lay in front of Asa, Yoru, and Denji. Well, actually, three. The death they could experience in the aging devil's realms, the death they could experience at each other's hands, or the death that they could experience at the hands of the Death Devil. Really, any way you look at it, death is on the horizon for all three of them. But let's explore that first possibility first. Death at the hands of the aging devil's realm. See, because after Asa falls through this dream into the aging devil's realm, she stumbles upon Denji's unconscious body. And as she tries to bang Denji to death, she realizes her powers don't work in this universe. It's at this point that a former devil hunter who at one time realized that his laugh lines were deepening and said if there's an aging devil I would make a contract with him to stop aging, reveals to us that simply saying those words out loud is what dragged him into this aging devil's realm 83 years ago. And as a person who's been in this realm for 83 years, he's actually been there the least amount of time out of anyone. He then reveals to Asa that there's other humans deeper in the forest, but they've all lost their minds, so it's best to avoid them. However, supposedly a human escaped from this realm a long time ago. But before he's able to tell Asa or Yoru exactly how that person escaped, he begins to lose his mind, calling Asa Ritsuko, and rubbing his face against a tree, screaming out, "Mori! Mori!" Which, you know, is the Tatsuki Fujimoto. But anyways, it's from this point that chapter 181 picks up, with Asa and Yoru walking through the forest of the aging devil's realm, telling themselves not to panic, assuring themselves that this is completely fine and that they'll be able to find their own way out. They even go on to say that this kind of thing has happened to them before with the Eternity Devil, and therefore all they need to do is claim this realm for their own, turn it into a weapon, and then boom, they'll be out. But right as they're making this plan, Yoru raises her gun gauntlet hand to her temple and says, bang. However, nothing happened. And this is consistent with what happened in chapter 180, where Asa and Yoru weren't able to use Bang on the unconscious Denji. And thus it's revealed that Yoru is simply trying to confirm that their abilities do not work in the aging devil's realm. Yoru double confirms this by picking up a stick and trying to turn it into a sword. But the twig doesn't turn into a sword, and thus Yoru comes to the conclusion that this time is different from the fight against the Eternity Devil. That this time around, devil powers don't work. And this leads Yoru to the conclusion that her strength is no match for that of the aging devils. And as she rests her head against the tree, infuriated at the concept that her powers won't be able to break them out of the aging devil's realm, Asa asks Yoru what the plan is. And it's at this point that Yoru, infuriated, says, "Damn it," as she punches the tree that she's resting on. But we realize that that wasn't very polite because the tree is a person, and not the Ent kind of person, way more horrifically terrifying than an Ent. See, because after this tree is punched, it's revealed that there's somebody locked inside of it like this, with a horrifically elongated face and, well, horrifically elongated bosoms. I mean, those girls are hanging. And this tree person thing tells Asa or Yoru that hurt. Now, sufficiently scared by the fact that either there was a person locked in that tree or that gravity is coming for us all, Asa and Yoru let out a horrified screech and sprint away. And as they sprint away, they eventually quite literally stumble upon Denji, who's still laying on the ground, presumably unconscious. Now, it's this point that we realize that Asa and Yoru seem to have done a big old loop. Now, whether this was intentional, accidental, or if it's just the way that the aging devil's realm works, it seems as though Asa and Yoru's path is taking them back to the former devil exterminator and Denji. And it's at this point that the devil exterminator, who's apparently gotten his wits back, says, "I take it you saw a tree person." He then follows us up by saying something rather odd, and I can't tell if I should be looking into the meaning of this or just be writing it off as an insane character's ramblings. Because after he says, "I take it you saw a tree person," he says, "Welcome back, Sanae," which is the second time that he's referred to Asa and Yoru as a name that is not Asa or Yoru. Not that he even asked Asa or Yoru their name to try and refer to them correctly. And while I've Googled every ituration of Sayane and Ritsuko, I can't can't for the life of me find a connection between these two names. And thus I'm just assuming that this guy is insane and assuming that Asa and Yoru are people that they're not, because chapter 180 quite literally ends with him saying, "Oh, you're a hallucination that I've dreamt up," and then he hugs a tree and screams. But anyways, after welcoming back Asa and Yoru, he tells them, if you live in this realm for 1,000 years, you'll turn into a tree person just like that. Then when the tree eventually grows to its full strength, rots away, and returns to the soil, and your mind and body have completely become one with nature, then, and only then, can you return back to your body in the real world. And while some people might say this quick excursion to the aging devil's realm was unnecessary and is taking all of the steam out of part 2 of Chainsaw Man, this reveal alone makes this excursion worth it. Because that's the coolest way the aging devil's abilities could work possible. Essentially what the aging devil is doing with this realm is he's taking everybody who's afraid of aging and forcefully putting them in a situation where they can't age. The devil exterminator that's been there for 82 years looks exactly the same as he did when he was placed in the aging devil's realm. And he's going to look like that for 1,000 years. And then after those 1,000 years where he's able to move around and be a human, he's going to turn into a literal tree that will need hundreds, if not thousands of years to fully grow, decompose, and return to the soil. Meaning that those who are so afraid of aging that they'd be willing to make a contract with the aging devil to stop aging are being subjected to thousands of years of life. And in every single scenario, all of the people subjected to this are going completely insane. Effectively, what the aging devil is doing here is synonymous to what Izanami is used for. See, because Izanami in Naruto was created to counteract Izanagi usage in Naruto. See, because certain members in the Uchiha clan believed that the Sharingan shouldn't be sacrificed for anything. And if people were willing to sacrifice their Sharingans just to change what should have been their fate, well then that could lead to a dangerous road where people would use the Izanagi on trivial matters. And thus the Izanami was created to place people in an infinite time loop of genjutsu until they came to the realization that they shouldn't try to change fate. And what's being taught here in the aging devil's realm is really no different. Those who cower in the face of the idea of aging are being shown what a world where they never age would look like, and they're forced to live with that reality for thousands of years until eventually they come back to their body after existing in the aging devil's realm for thousands of years. And thus it's revealed as we pan out to a wide sweeping view of the forest that Asa, Yoru, and Denji are in, and it's in this moment that we realize that every single tree in that forest is somebody who's been in this realm for at least 1,000 years. An entire forest made of people too afraid of aging to accept it. And I think that is really cool. Like one of the coolest things Tatsuki Fujimoto has ever done. And I don't believe it's going to get the amount of credit that it deserves. Now, to this point that Yoru collapsed down to her knees and looks upon Denji's unconscious body and tells him, "This is all your fault." She then starts wailing on Denji, screaming about how it's his fault and how she's stuck here because of him. Because Denji is always getting tangled up with weird devils. And either because of the wailing of Yoru or because he's been awake this entire time, Denji awakes with tears in his eyes. And for at least the second time in part 2, Denji begins to have a breakdown. Through a bloody nose and teary eyes, Denji talks about how everybody he ends up with winds up miserable. He then tells Yoru that he's so freaking sorry and let them both know that he's gonna stay here as punishment until he turns into a big ass tree. And that staying in this realm until he turns into a tree and rots away will be his punishment and his retribution for being such an empty-headed, horny idiot. Now, Yoru, ever the empath, tells Denji to shut up, otherwise she'll hit him. But once again, Denji apologizes. And as Yoru winds up to punch Denji in the face, she instead leans down and kisses him. Now, this is the second time that something like this has happened. See, because when Denji broke down in the alley when he realized he was going to a soap house, when Naoto was out there somewhere in danger, when he was bashing himself for being such a horny idiot, Yoru kissed him in that alleyway and then, did a little bit more. And the situation is fundamentally no different from that one. And thus this happening again is a real testament to what Yoru told to Asa after she ended up hooking up with Denji in the alleyway. That Asa's feelings had begun to bleed into Yoru's feelings. And because that, the line between them is getting blurrier and blurrier. And here's the thing, this chapter ending with Yoru possibly giving into the feelings of Asa means that this chapter is basically ended in the way that could lead to the most possibilities for the future of Chainsaw Man. What do I mean by that? Well, yes, like I've already said, we've known for a long time that Asa is into Denji. And we've also known for a pretty long time that Yoru is slowly but surely also getting into Denji because of how strongly Asa feels for him. However, even though we were told that Yoru does have feelings for Denji because of Asa's strong feelings for Denji, Yoru has still multiple times tried to kill Denji. See, whether it was hitting the black no-eyed chainsaw man with a bang that disintegrated the majority of his body, or trying to finish him off after he was hit with that bang, much to Asa's protests, or even going so far as to immediately upon seeing Denji's unconscious body in the aging devil's realm, screaming out bang, 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 trying to eviscerate him, Yora's proved time and time again, even though she told Asa that they were simply gonna rip Pochita out of Denji's heart and give him a regular human heart, that Yoru doesn't really care how it happens, she just wants Chainsaw Man dead, and that's probably gonna come with Denji's death. Well, she either wants Pochita dead or as her weapon. Now, the situation is also interesting because Denji is Denji in the aging devil's realm, not the black no-eyed chainsaw man. Now, this is probably a symptom of the fact that devil powers do not work in the aging devil's realm, and therefore Denji, when he was cast down to the aging devil's realm, was returned back to his human form. However, this could also serve to tell us that Denji and Pochita are separated, and this wouldn't be the first time that this has happened. When Denji was battling against Makima and all of the weapons devils at the end of part 1, he was able to, as Chainsaw Man, rip out his own heart and throw it back to Earth when he was being blasted out of the stratosphere. Now, the only reason that Denji was able to operate his body without a heart is because he made a contract with Power, the blood devil, that allowed for Power to use the last of her powers to operate Denji's body without a heart for a small period of time. But this did prove that Pochita, in the heart form, would be able to regenerate without Denji, and therefore that Pochita, or the Chainsaw Man, can exist without the outside control of Denji. And this makes sense because every single time we've seen the black no-eyed Chainsaw Man, it's been Pochita in charge. And therefore, with Denji very notably being the entity that's existing down in the aging devil's realm, it's a possibility that Denji and Denji alone was cast down to that realm while Pochita is still in control of the body outside of the realm. Because while none of us can be confirmed, we can assume that time doesn't really technically move in the aging devil's realm. That is to say that time moves infinitely faster in the aging devil's realm, but not to the people inside of it. Because those who are cast down to the aging devil's realm feel as though they're down there for thousands of years, but when they're done with their stint as a tree, they go back to their regular body like nothing happened. That leads me to the question of how do Denji and Asa get out? And there's really only two answers to that question. Either they do, or they don't. Neither of those answers answer the how, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's for a moment talk about the possibility that Asa and Denji do not get out of the aging devil's realm. This is a somewhat solid possibility. Now, while yes, this would imply that Asa and Denji would need to spend 1,000 years in the aging devil's realm before they turn into trees and then eventually turn into soil, I do think this is technically a possibility. And I honestly believe Yoru going through and kissing Denji when he's very clearly upset was a way to set that up as a possibility. Because Asa and Denji can realize that in this world where devil powers don't work, and they have no technical way to get out, that they should take this time to do exactly what the aging devil told them to do. Mature. Denji's entire character arc in part 2 is that he's been too immature, too horny, and too empty-headed. And twice now, Asa/Yoru has had to been the one to get him out of that deconstructive spiral. So what if Denji actually realizes that the aging devil sending them down to this realm is a blessing in disguise? That now he gets to spend time with the woman that he loves, and technically it has no real-life implications to his body, which is in a separate realm. Now, obviously, we as readers don't have to see all 1,000 of these years, but this could serve as a fantastic foundation for Asa and Yoru no longer wanting to kill Denji or Chainsaw Man. This time that the two of them would spend together would make Asa and Yoru's feelings become even more intermixed, which would lead to the two of them basically being inseparable. And thus this would have the added benefit of putting Asa, Yoru, and Denji all on the same side, which is technically exactly what Fami wants. See, Fami's trying to make the War Devil and the Chainsaw Devil as powerful as possible so they can take on the Death Devil. However, if the War Devil kills the Chainsaw Devil, while technically the War Devil could turn the Chainsaw Devil into a crazy powerful weapon, the Fami force stands a much better chance against the Death Devil if both of them are alive and powerful. On top of this, as a unified force, they would stand a much better chance against the Aging Devil, who technically wants to be consumed by the Chainsaw Man in the first place. But I don't think Asa and Denji spending 1,000 years in the Aging Devil's realm is the most likely conclusion to this plotline. I believe what is substantially more likely is that Asa and Denji do spend a fair-ish amount of time in the Aging Devil's realm until it's revealed that Denji, who apparently has a contract with the most powerful devil of all time, the Chainsaw Devil, realizes that he is currently trapped in a tree-based hell. Yes, I'm aware that it's been established that devil powers do not work in this realm, but I find it rather curious that Denji, who is the Chainsaw Man, would be cast down into a prison-like realm that revolves around people turning into trees. On top of this, the Devil Exterminator told us that somebody was able to escape from this realm a long time ago, and that person who was able to escape might have been the second Chainsaw Man. See, it's gotten rather confusing, but as it currently stands, there's 3 Chainsaw Man. There's the red Chainsaw Man, which is Denji, the black Chainsaw Man, which is Pochita, and the fake Chainsaw Man, which is, well, we actually don't know who it is. This is the Chainsaw Man who dispatched of Yuko and helped in the battle against the Falling Devil. And while we've seen this fake Chainsaw Man a couple of different times, their identity has never been confirmed. And thus it might have been this fake Chainsaw Man using the powers of the chainsaws that was able to escape from the Aging Devil's realm in the past. But as to how he was able to do it, I genuinely cannot say. But I do believe this clear setup of trees versus chainsaws, and possibly the reveal that Denji, through the use of his chainsaws, is able to free all of the people from the Aging Devil's realm, will begin to lead us down the road of understanding why the Chainsaw Devil is the strongest devil in the Chainsaw Man universe. But as it currently stands, all I got is theories, which means I'm gonna have to wait at least another 7 days to start getting some answers. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What did you think of chapter 180 and 181? Did you like them? Do you understand the complexity of them? Do you appreciate the complexity of them? Or do you think they're taking the wind out of the sails of what was the most heated battle in part 2 of Chainsaw Man? Let me know in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, if I know anything about Yoru's track record of kissing a distraught Denji, next chapter is gonna be sticky.